Okay, there we go. Yeah, thanks you guys for joining this Acupressure for Digestion class. For those of you who haven't met me yet, my name is Haley Enright. I have been an acupuncturist, energy healer, and teacher since 2009. I've given more than 15,000 treatments in 3 different countries, and I'm currently based in Lisbon. I've got 2 projects here. One is Acupuncture in Lisbon, which is my acupuncture studio. I've also got Lisbon Wellness, which is a collective of holistic practitioners. And I just launched a new project, which is really fun. I'm finding this super entertaining. It's called AcuPoint Tarot. You can follow it on Instagram. It's free. It's free weekly readings of acupoints that you can use to help boost your physical health, your emotional well-being, and your soul connection to source. So if you want to check it out and give me a follow, that would be great. It's acupoints.tarot on Instagram. And these things are also in the chat, so you can find the name there. Also, the PDF for this class is linked in the chat. So if you click on that link, you can download the PDF and you'll see the points that we're using and little indications for why you would use them. So that information is there. Okay, so let me begin by talking a little bit about how digestion works. So from the Western perspective, it's really all about, like the food that you take in and it goes down into the gut. And you start breaking stuff down with the amylase, the saliva in your mouth, which really begins the digestion of carbs. And then in the stomach, it's the stomach acid, hydrochloric acid, which is really for the digestion of proteins, because those things are tough and you need stomach acid to break it apart. And then after it exits from the stomach, it kind of goes into the small intestine and the large intestine, and we get all the other enzymes that are needed to break down the various nutrients that way from the pancreas. And and that's how digestion is happening in our bodies from the Western perspective. So you've also probably heard of the gut-brain connection. Is that right? Yeah, okay. So the gut and the brain, oh my gosh, they're just 2 sides of the same coin. And it's so interesting because in the gut, you have more neurotransmitters in your gut than you do in your brain. So what does that mean? Your gut is doing a whole lot of thinking for you, and it's doing that all the time. It's just like, oh my gosh, I find that incredible. I think one interesting sign about how we really think with our stomachs is I sometimes run into this in my practice. I will suggest to somebody that, oh, you might want to stop eating that food because it seems to be upsetting your system. And sometimes people have a really hard time hearing this because so much of the way we think is related to how we eat, how we digest. And it's so difficult to give up foods that like you really have an emotional connection to. And we have emotional connections to things that come into our stomach, right? So if you've ever found yourself in that situation of being like, yeah, but I don't want to quit my gluten or ice cream or whatever it is, you are not alone. It's not always easy to do that stuff. So that's a little bit about how the digestive tract works from the Western perspective. From the Eastern Chinese medicine perspective, it's really quite different. Oh, you are always welcome to interrupt me with questions. So if you have questions as we're going along, don't hesitate. All good so far? Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, from the Eastern perspective, it's quite different because it's really based around the meridians. And meridians are communication units in the body, and they don't have the same one-to-one correspondence as in the West, because in the West, we think about, like the cardiovascular system or the muscular system or the nervous system. But the truth is, none of those systems operate in isolation, right? They all have to work together so that your body maintains itself. And in Chinese medicine, the concept of the meridian really takes into account the fact that all of these things are working together all of the time. So for example, the lung meridian goes from your thumb up your arm into your chest into your lungs. Well, so if you look at this, it looks like a line, right? But it's a 3-dimensional line. So what we're dealing with is skin, bones, blood, connective tissue, muscle, nerves, all of the fluids that are flowing through these regions, the hormones, the neurotransmitters, all that stuff, the lungs themselves, the lining of the lungs, all of that is one connective unit, one communication unit. And so when the communication units of our body work well together, then that means things can function well. So by using the meridians and acupuncture points, you are boosting your body's ability to communicate to itself. And it already knows how to communicate a vast amount of information in a really quick way, because that's what it's designed to do. So that's a little bit about how your body works in Chinese medicine. On the digestive standpoint, the meridians that kind of mostly control digestion sort of look the same, right? We are talking stomach, we are talking large intestine, but we're also talking the spleen. And that doesn't make sense in the West, but the spleen in Chinese medicine is kind of the motor of digestion. So this is the meridian and the organ that is responsible for breaking up the food that we eat and sending it everywhere out into the body. So without the spleen function, we wouldn't be able to process stuff and send it where it needs to go. The stomach actually is viewed as what they call a hollow organ. Its job is to receive the food, not necessarily do as much with it as we see in the West. It's the spleen that then comes in and says, like, all right, you nutrient there, you nutrient there, you nutrient there. And the large intestine as well, it's a passageway. So that is a little bit similar there, which is cool. So any questions about that? No? Okay, cool. So how do you guys feel digestively? What is happening with you? Are you having any symptoms? Do you have any diagnoses?
I have chronic constipation.
Okay. Do you have a diagnosis about it, or just something that you experience?
It's something that I experience, it's something that kind of runs in my family as well, but I think it is mostly psychosomatic. Although obviously nutrition helps it, but only to a certain extent.
Okay. Yeah, constipation is a really common issue. It's something that a lot of people experience, not only on a chronic basis, but also situationally. Like, I see a lot of tourists in my studio because they're like, oh, I need help. I'm traveling and I'm constipated. Like my body doesn't want to work the same way when I get on a plane and fly to another time zone. So it's kind of easy for the body to fall into a pattern like that, right? Any other issues you guys are facing or diagnoses?
I'm probably the opposite, where I feel like my stools are pretty loose, and quite frequent. And it's been brought to my attention that I might want to try something like dairy-free or gluten-free. So maybe some kind of intolerance there, but yeah, like you said earlier, a little hesitant to let go of those things. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure, because those are the yummy things, right? It's interesting that you've been advised to give up dairy and gluten, because actually in Chinese medicine, the spleen, the main digestive organ, really doesn't process dairy and gluten very well, and it can make it feel kind of like floppy. I'm not going to do my work, like putting things together the way that they're supposed to be, like packaged together in a sense, if you will. So, it would be really interesting to experiment with that and see how that is for you.
Sure, yeah.
But, it's probably also easier to just do one thing at a time rather than both, because then you get a sense of like what each one is doing for you.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And I think there is a blood test that indicates like celiac or gluten intolerance. So I thought, let me do that before I go too crazy with anything else.
Yeah. Cool. Anybody else feel like speaking up? And you know what? So like I talk about bowel movements and all kinds of things in my studio all day, every day. So for me, it's like, this is a very common conversation, and you can't shock me. It doesn't gross me out.
I have a comment. So in the past, I would always be super, super gassy after eating. So I just thought it was normal. And then this year when I realized the whole sugar thing, and then I stopped, or I tried to limit my sugar, and all the gas went away. But I still realized recently that if I don't properly cook mushrooms, then I get gassy again. So it's kind of weird.
That's interesting.
And before it was fine. I could eat it raw.
Okay. So yeah, that is kind of curious. I wonder if there's an issue with the gut microbiome showing up there. Perhaps it needs a little bit supplementation to help process that issue. I'm not sure, but you might enjoy exploring that.
Yeah.
But yeah, giving up sugar is a great thing to do. Oh my gosh, that's like so healthy to not eat processed sugar.
I didn't say I gave it up. I'm trying. It's so hard. It's in everything.
I know it's in everything. And honestly, that's like my cheat sweet food. That's my downfall. If I could eat cookies all day, every day, I would do that. But I know I can't really function if I just eat cookies. So I have some self-restraint, but cookies, pastries, they've just got my name written all over it. Which is also interesting because like my constitutional element is spleen, and spleen loves that sugar, even though it's not supposed to eat it. But anybody else?
I've been the same as Grace. What Grace said really is from a young age. We've got constipation in our family. Just my daughter's been the same, and it's only been probably the last 6 months where I've been on a probiotic that I've noticed a massive difference. And I've also brought in some intermittent fasting as well, which I think has helped. But I'm at that stage now where there's no diagnosis, but if I eat certain things, I can really notice the difference immediately, like bloating, really being uncomfortable, and often when we travel as well. So I think it's definitely psychological stuff too. But yeah, I think the stage I'm at the moment is just trying to decipher what it is exactly that I've eaten that's like just changed for me.
Well, then that's a good project to embark on, and like, yeah, really pay attention to your diet and see what foods work better for you. That's wonderful information that kind of only you can get for yourself, because you have to do the experimentation of, all right, does this work? Does this not work? And modify around that. Yeah, and this idea, going back to what you said too, Grace, a little bit of psychosomatic issues. I mean, like the gut-brain connection, there's no difference. Like we have this word psychosomatic as if there is a difference, but there isn't, like as long as we are embodied in this body, our mind and our emotions and our physicality are so closely intertwined that they do not separate. So I'm saying this because I would like there to be greater acceptance for this idea, not have it viewed as if like, oh, well, we're just not processing stress well. It's way more profound than just that, Anybody else?
I don't want to cut anyone off if anyone's going to speak, but I was just going to mention, and I would be really curious if anyone else has had an experience like this. So actually growing up, I really didn't like dairy. And then as I've gone into adulthood, you just, I don't know, your palate changes, I guess. But there's something really interesting that as a child, I hated that. And I'm really curious if anyone discovered that any of the foods that make them feel not so great, if they had like an initial dislike toward them. Does that make any sense?
That's a cool question. Audience, any thoughts? Well, that's really interesting, and it makes me wonder about the spleen element in your body particularly, because the spleen is sensitive to dairy, gluten, and sugar. But then also there's the fact that it's kind of common for children to not taste foods the same way adults do, because their taste buds are quite different. Actually, like they do mature over time, and so like that's why kids may not like broccoli, but adults do, because like they're tasting the bitterness more than the other elements of it. So from that perspective, it's normal to have changes in your taste over time as you age. However, the fact that you think that you may be sensitive to dairy anyways, that could have been a clue for you. In my own life, I really noticed, and I didn't notice because I figured this out myself. Actually, it got figured out for me when I was in college. My boyfriend, who's now my husband, was like, "You know what? We should be vegetarian." I was like, "Wait, what do you mean we should be vegetarian? What are we gonna eat? We're gonna die, right?" Because I just grew up in the regular Western standard household. Like we were not, didn't do anything medical. It just wasn't part of our home culture to do that. And I was like, "What?" Obviously, this is before I became an acupuncturist. And eventually I agreed to try this with him because I was like, well, okay, we were driving back to college after one vacation, and we stopped at a Sonny's Barbecue, which is a chain in Florida, like off the highway, and we ordered whatever we ordered, ribs, and it was so gross. It was just really disgusting. And like, I was somebody who liked ribs, and I was like, this is the worst food ever. We both decided, all right, let's try it, because this is really blech. And after that, you know, what happened to me is like my health increased by a whole lot. And I realized, which was a complete shock to me because nobody had ever said anything like this to me in my life. Every time after I would eat a meal, pretty much like my energy would tank. I would feel like trash. I'd have to lay down. And it never occurred to me that it could be the food. Never, not in a million years. And I stopped eating meat and I stopped having that problem. And I was like, oh, wow, there's really something to this, you know? And then later on, I heard about the theory of eat right for your blood type. And it turns out that I think that may be true for some people, just like all diets are true for some people, right? And you do have to figure out which diet works for your body because you are different than everybody else, right? But I happen to be an A positive blood type. And in that book, it suggests that you should be a vegetarian. And I feel so much better not eating meat. And I haven't since college. And like, yeah, my life has drastically improved. So sometimes finding out if there's a food trigger that's making your body feel really sensitive or, you know, tanks your energy in some way is like, it's a blessing. So experimenting with your diet is the way to do that, you know? Any questions or thoughts about that? How are we doing for time? Okay. Okay. Well, so let's get into the acupressure part of this. So I'm going to teach you 4 points today. And so there's so many wonderful points in the body. Acupressure is this great system. Acupressure is using acupuncture points. Have you guys done it before, acupressure? No? Maybe yes, maybe no. Okay. So yeah, not really. Acupressure is using your fingers, or you could use some other object if you prefer, but your fingers are always here, so it's handy, to press and rub acupuncture points on your body. And an acupuncture point is kind of like a little magic button. If you imagine that you have to use a computer because you want to send an email, right? Well, first you have to open your browser, then you got to log into your email, then you got to type the email, then you got to hit send. There's these steps that you do using the buttons on your computer to make that happen. And it's possible because this program, this information is already stored in the computer, and that allows you to affect the process that you want to do. So acupuncture points are kind of the same. They're little sort of information buttons that, hi Rose, welcome. Little information buttons that allow you to affect the processes that are stored in your body, because your body already knows how to do a vast number of things. It's so fantastic. If we had to think about all the things that it could do, we would not have time to do anything else. I mean, like, are you aware of how many times you blink your eyes per minute? Probably not, unless you have something stuck in your eye, right? Nor do you think about probably how much saliva your mouth makes during the day, which you need not only to keep it moist and comfortable, but also to start breaking down food. Unless you got a problem, you're not really thinking about it because it's running automatically in the background. Lucky for us. So using these acupuncture points is a way to stimulate that function that's already there. It's already wired into the system to do something that you want it to do. So acupressure is a subtle kind of work, right? Because you're not coming in with like a hammer and like beating yourself up about something, one. Also, you're not doing something external to yourself. It's different from taking a pill, right? Which changes your biochemistry to elicit a certain set of responses. And this is why actually pills always have side effects, because biochemistry does not yet understand the ramifications of making a change over here, how it then follows down the line, because everything is connected in the body. It's not really possible to just press one thing and only one thing happens, right? With a pill. So with acupressure, you're using this hardwired information that's already in the system, but it takes a little bit of time sometimes to notice it, because all of these functions, for the most part, are happening below the level of your attention. Unless you've spent time thinking about them on purpose, like, you know, you're just not really paying attention to them. So when you first start doing acupressure, be patient with yourself to allow the information to become noticeable to you. It's there. The information is there. Your body's already doing these things, because if it wasn't, like, you wouldn't be alive, you wouldn't be in this class right now, right? So the information is there, but it can take some practice to get sort of quiet enough to feel it working. So that's one thing, you got to practice. And then two, the more that you practice, it's a little bit like going to the gym. You're like, all right, I'm going to exercise this muscle. I'm going to exercise this muscle. And if you do that one day, that's great. But if you do it like, you know, every week for 6 weeks or whatever it is, you're going to have more muscles, right? Because you've been practicing running that function. So acupressure does require some practice, but it's so easy to do, and it really doesn't take very long, that it's kind of a fun and simple thing to practice that you can probably do at most places where you happen to be. Because, you know, like if a point is on the hand, for example, you know, you could be rubbing your hand in public and nobody's necessarily going to notice that, right? Is that all I have to say about that? Yeah. Okay. So when I practice acupressure, what I like to do first is sort of get quiet and get settled and notice how I feel things in my body. So take a moment, just sit into your chair, take a couple of nice deep breaths. Just kind of feel how you feel. And when you feel kind of a little bit more centered, a little bit more like aware of yourself, you might bring up your hands in front of you. And this is what I call playing with your chi ball. If you bring your hands together, you might feel a little bit of resistance or a little bit of tingling in your palms. What you're feeling is your own energy field, your own chi. So this chi ball can be really big and it can be really small. But if you are just starting, it's easier to feel it when your hands are closer together. So start small and just kind of notice that your hands feel active. And it's okay if you don't notice. This can take some time, but you do have an energy field and it is there. So if you practice, you will feel it. Okay. So then when my hands feel like they're kind of warmed up and I feel kind of like centered in my body, then I would find a point and I would rub it for, 30 seconds to 2 minutes. And like the way that you rub a point, do it in a way that feels good to you. So, if I'm going to rub this one, for example, I like a medium amount of pressure, not a lot of pressure, because that just doesn't feel good to me. And so I might do like a circle. I could do like push-ins, I could do taps, I could stroke it, I could do a lot of different things. You can choose what feels good to you. And it might differ on the day, right? So that's basically it. That's how you do acupressure. You kind of settle into your body, activate your hands if you like that, and then you press and rub the points for about up to 2 minutes per point. You can do this as many times a day as you like because it's not harmful. And you're reminding these acupuncture points like, oh yeah, run that function. Oh yeah, do that thing that you already know how to do. Any questions about that?
Do you have to know specifically what the points are for, or can you just be like, oh, my knee hurts, I'm just going to rub that, not knowing what I'm rubbing?
No, you can totally explore like that, of course, because your body is full of acupuncture points. So chances are you're going to be rubbing around one or maybe one in particular. So like, yeah, so like a self-massage thing is always a nice thing to do. Is it helpful to have in mind what it is you're using a point for? Yeah, sure. Because when you're bringing intention to your activity, it becomes more effective. It's like if you went to go play baseball and you didn't really know how to play baseball, could you have a good time? Yeah, sure. But if you like have some idea of like what you're supposed to do and the rules and stuff like this, then it's kind of more engaging because you're participating at a higher level. You know what I mean?
And Hayley, do you do this when you're, because we're going to be looking at digestive ones in particular. So do you do this when you're feeling a bit out of sorts? Or
Yeah,
is
sure.
this something you do every week just to kind of maintain it?
Well, if it was me and I was dealing with a problem that's, a chronic problem that's been going on for a while, I would start using these points, the ones that I decide are useful for me, and I would practice them regularly on a daily basis because you're reminding your body, oh yeah, I know how to do that thing. So you can, of course, use them in a crisis moment when you're like, oh no, I really don't feel so good. But if your body already has this kind of like reminder happening, like, oh wait, I know how to do this, then you can get better results.
And I was just going to ask, I feel like you mentioned something at the beginning about a handout or something in the chat. Did I miss? Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a link in the chat to the Acupressure for Digestion PDF that you can download for free. It's on my website.
Is everyone else able to access it? Because I'm like, am I technologically?
I don't see it. I don't
No,
see it
I
either.
don't see it.
I don't
either.
see it.
You don't see it? Okay. Let me see here. All right, well, let me put it back here then, because the PDF here. You don't really need it for this class right now, but you might want it for later. So I suggest you download it later. But all good there?
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so let's start with the first point. So this point is on the stomach channel. And this point, you know, these points are just magical, but I particularly love this one. It's called Stomach 36. And if I could only ever need a 1 point on somebody for the rest of my life, I would pick this one. It is so good at so many things. So basically, if you have any digestive problem, this is a go-to powerhouse point. It's going to work on literally any digestive problem you can think of. In addition to that, because these points, they're like people. They're like people with like a diverse set of skills, right? Like you, for example, are really good at, you know, this thing that you do in your life, and you're also really good at this other area of things that you do in your life, right? Maybe you would say that about 5 or 10 different things that you do. So these points do the same. So this point is digestion. This point is hormones. This point is immune system. This point is like mental balance. This point is pain relief. I mean, it's kind of like it just does everything. So like this one is near and dear to my heart. So we're opening with this big one. Let me show you where it is. So it's on your leg. If you find your knee and you want your outside knee, right? So the outside of your leg, find the dimple. And then you come down about a little bit more than a hand's width and just kind of feel around in here. Like this point is here on me right now. This point can be kind of large, you know, maybe like that's bigger than a golf ball, and it can migrate depending on what you've eaten. But if you're poking around in here, you might find an area that's like a little bit more sensitive. And if you found that area, you're like, okay, that's the point for me today. And of course, that's on both legs. So for this class for right now, for practicing, just practice one leg at a time. And then when you're doing this yourself, you would do like both sides. But just practice one leg at a time, 1 point at a time, because I want you to learn how to pay attention to what is happening at one spot. And it's also normal for the sensations to differ day to day, because you're like a little bit different every day, right? So like what it feels like today may not be what it feels like tomorrow. When you do acupressure, it can be common to notice sensations right there locally. It can also be common to notice sensations in many other places in the body because the way everything is connected, as I explained earlier. So if you're pressing this point and you're like, oh, suddenly like my neck or my head or my toe or something like that feels different, cool. Just notice that and celebrate, if you will, the fact that everything is connected in the body. So let's take 1 minute. Let me set a timer. And press and rub this point in a way that feels comfortable to you. Do you have any questions about where it's located or anything? No? Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I
Go
don't
ahead.
know exactly where it is. Like I'm obviously in the right area of my knee, but.
Well, I can't see you, so I'm not sure where you are.
Oh, let me see if I can.
Yeah.
I have camera problems and sometimes it doesn't recognize. Let me see if I can turn it off. Oh, there we go. Cool.
Hi.
Hi. So can I raise my, I don't know how to show you. Oh, well, yeah. Okay, there we go. So like, I'm kind of here.
Yeah, I mean, just like rub around that whole area and see if you notice a spot that's kind of tender, because that's usually how this point presents, is feeling a little bit tender.
Okay. Just kind of keep going around here, and this is the right-ish area.
Yeah, that's the right area, and see if you can like narrow it down to a smaller area that you are actually pressing on.
Okay, cool.
Any other questions? Okay, Well, then take a minute if you haven't already started and just press and rub this point. And see if you notice anything in your body. One of the indications for the point, actually, it's quite cool. It's called leg 3 miles. And the idea here is if you are exhausted and you are at the end of your resources, if you stimulate this point, you will have enough energy to walk 3 more miles. Because again, that's just how fantastic this one is. So again, all digestive issues and also things that happen in your mind because of the gut-brain connection, right? So you could be feeling lack of focus, depression, anxiety. Oops, there goes the timer. Let me get to my list and I will tell you with a little bit more detail. Yeah, you could be angry, you could be feeling fearful, you could be sad, you could be agitated, all of these things, which really commonly go with digestive issues because of the gut-brain connection, right? Especially if you're dealing with like, IBS and IBD and Crohn's and stuff like this, it's very common to feel a lot of emotional like, oh God, when these things are happening, like a lot of anxiety or panic attacks and things like this, because your body's one connected unit. So when you feel stuff like that, it's just a signal that it's time to pay attention to what you can do to help regulate the system that needs some balance. So while it feels crappy to feel these things, it's a good thing that we have the signaling happening, because if we didn't notice there was a problem, we wouldn't be able to address it, right? So that's the upside of feeling bad. Any questions about this point?
If you find, I guess, the point, would you want to just like hold it down, or are you just kind of going in circles?
Yeah, do what feels nice to you. You could just apply steady pressure. I like to rub in a circular manner because that feels good to me. But yeah, it's your body. You can do it the way that you like it. Okay, next point, shall we? Take another deep breath. Oh, I should ask you first. Did you notice anything by pressing and stimulating this point? And it can take some practice, so it's okay if the answer is no.
I definitely noticed a sensitive area, like a specific sensitive point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you find what food triggers bother you and you stop eating them, then this point often becomes less sensitive. It becomes like more normalized. So that is kind of a cool clue. Like I notice when I eat, I'm a spleen constitution person, so I don't do that great with dairy. But if I eat a lot of dairy, this point gets really sensitive on me because it's like, you know what? You're making me slog through the food. And I'm like, I know, I'm sorry. But that's sort of like a neat little litmus test you can do on yourself. Like, how good is this point feeling today? Am I feeding myself in a nice way? Okay, so let's do the next one. So take another minute, come back in, settle yourself. Tell your body thanks for paying attention to itself, because you are this miraculous, amazing, super intelligent structure. Oh my gosh, you are miracles walking around, right? So like, take a moment and be like, all right, ready? Like, you incredible thing, let's go. If you like, play with your chi ball again. Okay, the next point is spleen 6. Spleen 6 is another great complement point for the digestion, because remember, the spleen is like the main motor for digestion. And this point, where stomach 36 is kind of like the I'm going to do everything for you point. It's on a yang channel, right? So it's got this yang like ability to like step up to the plate and go for the home run. Spleen 6 is a very yin point. So this is like when you need to like, okay, I need to sort of like need to give myself the hug. I need to be like more nourishing and softer, because like this is, feeling weaker or tired or just like floppy. Like this is a good point for just bringing in that sort of soft nourishment. It's on the earth channel, which also stomach is an earth channel thing. Oh my gosh, I don't have time to talk about everything in this class, but like if you think about sort of like Mother Earth, like just nourishing yumminess, like that energy comes in with this point too. You can use it for a great many digestive problems, in addition to hormones and immune stuff and pain stuff. This one's for bloating, diarrhea, constipation, poor absorption, vomiting, headaches, because like sometimes when you have digestive problems, you feel headachy, nausea. For the mind, it's good for anxiety, insomnia, palpitations, focus, and fear. And this is all in your handout, so you don't need to write this down. Let me show you where it is. It's above your ankle. So if you find your ankle, your inner ankle, so find the high point of your ankle bone. Put 4 fingers there. It's above, right above the 4 fingers. And I like to press around in here too, because I've noticed that this point moves around a little bit. So I think, yeah, it's kind of like right there for me today. Does that make sense? Everybody got it?
Should we be looking for a sensitive spot again, like we did before?
It's probably sensitive. It's sensitive on a lot of people a lot of the time.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's take 1 minute and just do that point and see what you notice. And again, it's on both sides, but just practice one for right now. How are you guys doing? Noticing anything? Well, so with stomach 36, I noticed, oh, you're supposed to be off. With stomach 36, I really noticed it was like supporting sort of my baseline energy, because to be honest with you, I did not sleep a lot last night. So I am pretty tired today. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I can keep going then, which is a nice function of that. With this one, I feel like it's working kind of more closely on my digestion. I went to lunch with my mom today, which was delightful. And she likes to go to this restaurant where the food doesn't really agree with me, but you know, I want her to have a good time. So I go there and I eat it and it tastes good, but I know it's just like, oh, it's a lot of dairy and I don't really feel that great after eating it. One of these days I'm going to tell her that, but she just likes this restaurant so much, you know? So yeah, so I feel like this is helping me like more specifically in my digestive tract today, which is nice. I probably should have worked on this point earlier. How about you guys?
Haley, can you hear me? It's Catherine.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I felt an immediate sense of calm when I
Yeah,
was present.
this is a
Very
really calming point. Absolutely. It's got 3 yin meridians in here, and it's really good for like agitation and anxiety, also insomnia. Okay, cool. Moving on to the next one. Take a minute, center yourself again. Activate your hands if you like. Okay. All right, so this next one is large intestine 4. Okay, the intestine, so like this is a really interesting one for making things move. This is a point to help things move. So if you have something stuck, like constipation, it's a good one. Oh, speaking of which, there are 2 points you should not do if you're pregnant. This one, large intestine 4, because of its ability to make things move, and spleen 6, because it has its also ability to help things move, and you don't want, you know, the baby to come out before it's time for the baby to come out. So if you're pregnant, do not do either of these points, okay? But yeah, large intestine 4. So you need things to move because it's stuck, it's hard, it hurts. It's really good for pain, not just in the digestive tract, really, which can happen like from under the ribs all the way down to the bottom, but pain anywhere in the body. It's good for headaches, dizziness, because sometimes when your digestion is not working, like you really feel like the brain fog or just kind of like this, like it's difficult to like focus through something. It can be helpful for that. Reflux, diarrhea, it's good for detoxy stuff. It's also good for hangovers because like, whoops, you drank too much alcohol, even though it was fun at the time, right? For your mind, it's good for anxiety, confusion, mania. I don't know about you, but if you've experienced like feeling like kind of blocked up or things are not working, it's like can make you feel like tense and not good. So like this can like help kind of calm that harder, more fiery response. Okay, so where it's located is if you find your hand, and the long bone right there, it's just in the middle. So when I'm doing this, I'm pressing in, down towards my pinky. Does that make sense? And then, of course, that's on both hands. But let's do this point for 1 minute. This point often is a little bit sore on people too. A lot of the times it's because we're constantly moving our hands. It's called an interosseous muscle, so it gets a lot of work. So it's a little bit tender, and that's okay. Then you find the right amount of pressure to apply to it. This point also has like a lot to do with the face. I can feel it relaxing my jaw, which is nice. That feels good. How are you guys doing? Did you notice anything?
Haley, so you said you want to push down towards the pinky? So
Yeah.
you're actually feeling the bone. So you're not just squeezing the skin, that flap, right, between the thumb and the pointer?
I mean, you could access it that way. Because like when
Yeah.
I do that, I feel the tender point there. I prefer when I needle it to needle down towards the pinky because I feel
Okay.
like that helps the needle get to the ankle. But if you feel like you're on the point, that's okay too.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Anything else?
Mine was very tender. Like, yeah, I definitely noticed that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, but this is like these are guideposts for us, because then it's easier to find if it's tender, right? So you're not like, oh, gee, am I on the point? You're like, yep, I'm on that point.
Does that point represent something different on, like, depending on which side of the body it's on? So if it's right or left, is it like left side of the intestine, right side of the intestines, or not at all?
No, it doesn't have that kind of connotation. There is a theory that like different sides of the body are either yin or yang, depending on which system you're looking at in Chinese medicine. They sometimes say that the right side is yin and the left side is yang, but it depends on which system. So it could also be reversed. But if you think that is interesting to play with, like now you're activating kind of like the yin aspect of this point, then like perhaps you would like to do it on the right side. If you want to activate the yang aspect of that point, perhaps you would like to do it on the left side. Okay, so now this is the last point. And this one is on the stomach channel again. It's called stomach 23, so it's a 23rd point. And okay, so with stomach 36, this is the big got it all together yang point. Spleen 6 is like the yin, the more nourishing, the softer, the like, let me hold you and take care of you point. Large intestine 4 is for like moving the things that are stuck and being like, all right, it's going out. Stomach 23 is really for kind of capturing the psycho-emotional essence of the digestive tract, because, I mean, find me the person who's dealing with gut issues that doesn't also feel symptomology in their mind, in their spirit. I have yet to meet that human who's like, oh yeah, I have IBS and I feel totally happy when they're having an episode. Nobody does. They feel like anxious or whatever is going on for them. And it's very common to have like symptomology up here. Your chest feels tight, palpitations, like panic attacks, like all of those things can happen because everything is connected, right? So this point is really strong for helping balance the two sides of these coins, right? The gut brain, partially because the stomach meridian has a direct connection to the heart. And it also has a direct connection to the brain. So not just on the Western side of things like the gut brain, but also like through the meridians. These things are tied together through meridians. So this is a great point to work on when you feel like you need to like, okay, let's settle the mind as well as the gut, because I'm not feeling good in either direction, okay? So where you find it is like, look at your finger and take this measurement from your finger. So like from the top to your second knuckle, right? That's your measurement. It'll be a little different in each person. Now find your belly button and come out to the side from your belly button, that measurement, and then come up. So your belly button is here. So you've gone kind of like a triangle, right? By going across and then up with your measurement. And then of course you have that on both sides of your belly button. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay, I'll take your silence as yes. Okay, so you can use this point for pain, bloating, poor appetite, diarrhea, and also all of that anxiety stuff along with irritability, manic depression. So let's take a moment, or let's take a minute, and let's do this point. Okay. How are you guys doing? How do you feel?
I'm curious if this is one that's better done standing up, sitting down, laying down. Maybe it doesn't matter at all.
No, it doesn't matter. I think it's easier to do acupressure if you're in a relaxed position, because then you're not also thinking about how you're holding your body in space. So I think it's easier to do the stuff if you're seated or laying down. But you can also do it standing. So this point on me is pretty interesting today. I feel like this is not an active point that I need. Like I feel almost like it's a little bit closed off going towards my head and upper chest because I'm not having any of these symptoms. I don't have these kinds of issues, lucky for me. And so that functionality for it is not available for me right now, which is fine, because as you do this, you may notice that like, okay, today this point doesn't seem to be hitting it for me. Respect that. Your body is different every day. And sometimes the points are going to be more active than others, depending on what's going on. And if today's the day where a point is not kicking it for you, cool. Then you don't need to use it. You know, come back to it another time. That is part of the skill of learning how to do acupressure, is you learn like which points are really good for you when. And you learn that by practicing, you know.
And did you say 2 minutes per point?
Up to 2 minutes.
Is that about right? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would do kind of a minimum of a minute if you're going to, you know, spend some time with these. And I would do them a couple of times during the day because you're just exercising your body's ability to run that function.
Okay.
Sorry if I'm jumping ahead here with questions, but similar question on the timing. Would all of these would you want to do them? Is there such thing as too soon after eating to do them? And similarly, would you want to do them away from eating? Like, how do you, what would your recommendation be?
Oh, that's a great question for learning how you process things. So yeah, I mean, there's basically no bad time to do acupuncture. But you might decide, like, as you're pressing and rubbing a point, like, oh, right now I just had that big meal and like this point doesn't feel so good to do right now. If you notice that, then go back to it at another time. Generally for acupuncture, though, a good time to do it is when you're not especially hungry, because that means your body's not diverting energy to your digestive tract because you ate something like maybe an hour ago, and it's okay. That being said, in the real world, people come in like immediately after meals all the time. They come in when they're really hungry. So like, does it still work? Yes, it still works.
My kind of where I was thinking, and correct me if this logic is wrong, is like you don't, because you said what was it? I can't remember which point that like sort of really rushes. It was the sixth one that really rushed, rushes things, moves things out. And
First intestine 4 actually on the hand.
Was it 4? Okay, yeah. And I'm thinking that like, you want to have good digestion, but you also want to let your body digest the foods. So like, would you want to not do that one right after eating, or is that not really a concern?
I wouldn't think it would have that strong an effect just from acupressure. Like, it's not going to make you evacuate your bowels probably immediately.
Yeah.
It's sending a signal that your body you should do that, but it's like, yeah, I don't think that would have an effect. That's an interesting question. Nobody's ever asked me that before.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Because this is like a soft way to interact with yourself, right? It's not a hammer. You're coming in a soft and gentle way to stimulate your body's intelligence, and the way that your body like moves through space and time and processes of its own is like it's like a dynamic spiral that is kind of slowly and gently furling and unfurling, right? So like it's not a natural state for it to shift like that unless there's like some kind of problem in the environment, like, oh my god, the lion's chasing me, I need to react right away, and then you do. Or like you take a pill and like that chemical comes in and is like, all right, now your body's doing this, and then you will, So in its natural kind of relaxed state, it flows through things. It doesn't rush through things, Any other questions? Okay. Well, so I like doing these classes so much. I'd like to do a series actually, and I'd like to do it on different topics. So if you want to give me some ideas about what another topic could be, I would love to hear that. I was thinking perhaps anxiety, perhaps insomnia, something like that, maybe headaches. But yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts about that for a future online class.
Yeah, I think like anxiety or rumination would be a great.
Cool.
I'm not sure if you would have done it already, but for me, sleep is a big thing. If it's things to acupressure before sleep or something like that, be cool.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah. Lori says insomnia. Okay. So 2 votes for that. Good.
I also think like about raising energy throughout the day as well. Raising energy levels.
Sorry, I was just gonna say I second that. That's the other one that came to mind. Definitely like that 3-4 p.m. slump, and it's like you just want something sweet or a coffee. I wonder if those are energizing points to do.
That's an interesting idea.
I like the anxiety suggestion, and then also maybe anything with just natural aging or hormones, or even the changes in our hormones on a monthly, day to day or year to year, or any of that.
Interesting. Oh my gosh, these are like really large topics. It would be very interesting to try to condense these into a class. I will give all of these some thought. Thank you. for these ideas.
I just piggybacking off that now that the ball's rolling, with hormones, like I've had irregular cycles, and if there's kind of maybe some points to help regulate a little bit. And the other one that's a little bit more niche that I'd mention as well is around like bruxism, or like I have a really tight jaw sometimes, and relaxing that, maybe that's probably tied up with anxiety as well. But yeah.
Yeah, cool. These are great. Thank you, everyone. All really good topics.
I have one more.
Yeah.
Something to move like stuck emotions in the body.
Stuck emotions in the body. I tell you what, your guys are throwing out like big, like, what do they call it when you hit it out of the ballpark? None of these are like fast and simple ideas. They're like quite complicated and require some thought. So thank you. All right. Well, so I have a question for you. If you like acupressure and you would like to learn more about it, I just started this new project on Instagram, which I'm really excited about because I love these points and they're so much fun. It's called acupoint.tarot. And every week I pull 2 acupoint cards. One is a yin card, one is a yang card. So it's a game. You choose if you are yin or yang, and you get the reading for the card. And the reading goes through what the point does for your physical health, your emotional health, and then also your soul connection to source, because we didn't really talk about that in this class, but because the body and the mind, the soul, the spirit, and the energy, it is all one thing as long as we are here in life. So to work on these points, there's also a lot of information about the esoteric functions of all of these, which I just didn't have time to get to because it's only an hour class. But if you watch acupoint.tarot, you get to explore that aspect too. The one for this week just came out, and it's got two really lovely points in there. I invite you to take a look. If you would like and follow that on Instagram, that would be lovely. The name for it is acupoint.tarot. And every week it'll be free videos, and then also a little, probably every week I'll put in like what I'm noticing, like, oh, this week people seem to need to work on this issue. Here's a point for that type of thing. So yeah. Anything else? Oh yeah. Well, if you want a treatment with me because you want some acupuncture for your body mind, I'm here in Lisbon. If you're not in Lisbon and you would like an energy treatment, and this is a treatment where you can sort of reconnect to source. You can reconnect your spark. You can help let go of patterns or ideas or emotions that are getting in your way from evolving. If you feel like you don't want to be stuck or blocked anymore, if you feel like you need more clarity, if you want to feel lighter in your mind and also lighter in your body, then an energy treatment is a really wonderful way to support that. And we do not have to be in the same room. We do not have to be in the same country or even the same continent, because energy work can be done across time and space, as it were. So if you would like something like that, that is available remotely or also in person. And you can look me up at acupunctureinlisbon.com. You can see all the stuff. So don't forget to download your free PDF. And I think that's all I have for today. Oh, Lori, thanks for that comment. You love the account? I appreciate it. Thank you for following it. Do you guys have any more questions before we sign off?
No, just a big thank you, Hayley. That was really useful, really interesting. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me
very
here.
helpful. And I also have a second for the tight jaws, because I know a lot of people are wearing mouth guards. And yeah, so to relax the jaws is really important. Would be very helpful.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because it doesn't help the issue, it just protects the teeth from being ground on.
Doesn't do anything. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, cool.
So this is very helpful. Thank you so much, Hayley.
Oh, thank you, Catherine.
Okay.
Thanks, Grace. And thank you, Claudia, for following as well. I appreciate that.
See ya. Hayley. Yeah. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, Rose. I'd love to hear your feedback about you practicing these if you feel like sharing that later. But cool. Yeah, thanks everyone for coming. And
thanks,
I'm around if you need me, so don't hesitate to get in touch. Have a good night.
Night.